Bulavinaka, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we thought it was appropriate and, of course, efficient to be able to have the Monash FNU partnership acknowledgement, or the ceremony we had earlier this afternoon, together with the launch of our National Climate Finance Strategy. As mentioned in that address, that finance, of course, is critically important in the climate change space. It's one thing to talk about climate change, it's one thing to talk about the impact of climate change. It's another thing to, for example, depend on countries to, for example, for aid, or look to some international process regarding, for example, getting access to finance. But we ourselves need to be very proactive about how we can actually access finance. I'll tell you a small story. Fiji, because for a number of years has been deemed to be a middle-income country, it meant that when we borrowed money from the World Bank, we could not get concessional financing. Notwithstanding the fact that you could actually have one climatic event that can set you back decades. Cyclone Winston in 36 hours wiped off 1/3 of the value of our GDP. In 36 hours, 1/3 of the value of our GDP gone. Now, if you continuously have those type of events that continuously ambush, destroy, annihilate your infrastructure, then you will never progress. You have to, of course, rebuild. The fact that we are facing these events because of climatic changes that we did not actually contribute to. Large carbon emitting countries did that. We did not do that. Even if you look at our carbon emissions today, it's almost negligible. Even if you put all the Pacific Island countries together, it's almost negligible in terms of our overall contribution to carbon emissions globally. So here we are at the coalface of climate change, continuously getting your infrastructure destroyed, people's homes being destroyed, yet not getting access to finance that is concessional. So we needed to be able to knock on the doors of these MDBs, etc. So for 4 or 5 years, we continuously went to the World Bank and said, you have to take our vulnerability into consideration. If you don't take our vulnerability into consideration, there is no way we'll be able to get out of this rut. There's no point having development plans for us because they are meaningless. So we now have concessional financing from the World Bank at 0% interest rate. 0.75%, you have a service fee. ADB has just started this year for us to get access to concessional financing. The Japanese, for example, now on a bilateral basis are recognizing our vulnerability to climate change. We're getting under climate catastrophe funding, we're getting 0.01% interest rate, 40-year term, 10-year grace period, which essentially means that you end up having at least 60% of the loan that you borrowed as grant, which a lot of people who talk about debt do not understand what they're talking about. So these changes have taken place, but as we have, as a country, have decided that we need to be able to be one step ahead of the ball game. In the same way, even though our carbon footprint is almost negligible, we still have made a commitment to reduce our carbon footprint. Reduce our carbon footprint by 30%. Because when you go to the international stage, you're actually able to shame people. Psychology, it also is very important because we need to have that commitment also. I mean, we don't want buses that climb up this small hill up Kinoya to be emitting carbon dioxide. We like to see one day electric buses. Just across the road, we're actually going to set up a what we call suburban bus terminal in Valulevu in the grounds. These buses will actually run around the Nasinu area to be able to provide service, to get into streets where currently buses don't go into. One of the conditions of buses getting their license would be, at least to start off, each one of them should have one electric bus. We've got people here working for us all the way from UK, helping us together with WRI and various other organizations to get us into that space, to be able to access finance for these people, to have those electric buses up and running. So we need to be able to do that. It does cost money, but it also must actually ensure that we improve the quality of the lives of our people. Fundamentally, in a nutshell, this is what this climate finance strategy is all about. If you look at many Fijians, even though the rate of electrification in Fiji has been unprecedented over the past 12 years or so, in particular in the past 8 years, has been unprecedented. Close to $200 million of electrification programs have been implemented, where people now have electricity. There are many, of course, who need to get electricity not from the grid itself, but standalone systems, whether they are solar, whether they are smaller renewable energy sources. That needs finance. Many of you have seen the 4-lane road that comes out of Nandi Airport all the way to Matintar. If you notice something, there's no overhead cables. It cost us nearly $20 million more to put those cables underground. EFL is here. They are partners. We need them to become even more partnerful. But those things cost money. The fact is, when there's a cyclone, next time in Nandi area, at least in that portion of the road, there's nothing to blow down. We would, of course, like to get more of these cables underground, when there's nothing to blow down. But it costs a lot more money upfront. And when people say to us, oh, you're borrowing money, what will our future generations do? They don't understand the cost of the funds. They also don't understand the future generations won't have to do that. We've already done it for them. The cost of building something today is far cheaper than building it in 10 years' time. Putting those overhead cables now underground means they don't have to put it up next time there's a cyclone. I've seen it with my own eyes in Vanuatu. I think it was during Cyclone Yasa time, when there were three or 2.5 cyclones. But in one particular area, the cables went down, put back up. A month later, went back down, put back up. Another month later, went back down, put back up. 3 times. 3 times in about 4 months. Now, are we being stupid by not addressing that? Or are we simply going to look up till our noses and say, let's not do it, let's not borrow money? If it takes Tongans to come and help us put up electrical cables after Cyclone Winston, it goes to show to you the magnitude of the devastation that took place. How many thousand kilometers of electrical cables went down because of Cyclone Winston? Some places it took 3 months for them to get electricity. Not because there's no funding. There's no human capacity to provide connectivity when you have so many thousands of kilometers of electrical cables coming down. So wouldn't we rather have that underground? Because the longer they're not connected, the more inefficient we become, the more unproductive we become. People can't go to work. The guy who's selling fish by the roadside no longer is able to cool his fish. The lady who's doing sewing cannot do her sewing for the next 3 months. Kids cannot do their homework after dark. You have to look at the big picture, to look at what is being planned for the future. So we need to be able to ensure that our financing capacity is there. There's actually a strategy in what areas are we going to address. So I don't want to make a long speech, but I just wanted to bring home the point as to why this is being done. It's been done, of course, to ensure that we have a new level of transparency. And as we've seen, we've got, I think, about 7 or 8 reports that have already been written by the Climate Change Division, or been drafted. And some of them, of course, I can never remember all of them. So we have, for example, we have our National Adaptation Plan and the Climate Vulnerability Assessment. An assessment was done working with the World Bank. Cost us over $9 billion to build that capacity, reduce our vulnerability. Our mitigation strategies can be found in the low emissions development strategy that's available. It's available online, it's available in hard copies. We have a NDC investment plan, an NDC implementation roadmap. And of course, our national development plan, it includes extensive climate priorities. And as we've said, our national development plan, the other day we had a meeting with all the UN agencies, and we said that we'd like to get some quick assistance to be able to look at our NDP to ensure that it's now kept up to pace or is reflective of what we've been through in the past 2 years. The pandemic obviously has changed the matrix altogether. How we expected the economy to grow and what capacity in which areas, of course, has changed. We are now in the rebuilding of the economy. We're still not out of the throes yet, but we need to be able to take that into account to be able to have a much better development plan. So there's a number of things on foot, and this National Climate Finance Strategy, of course, feeds into the National Climate, the Climate Change Act, which requires a climate strategy to be put in place. And we hope to operationalize the Climate Change Act very soon. It provides a number of opportunities, for example, for landowning units in terms of carbon trading. I found it really amusing that we had somebody in Parliament saying, why are you going to charge us now for the oxygen we're going to breathe? In fact, there's a complete lack of understanding what carbon trading is all about. Carbon trading is actually about making sure we have more oxygen and not charge for it. The reality of the matter is that in today's economic metrics, you only value forest when it's cut down. Nobody says, oh, that landowning unit has got 1,000 acres of trees. Nobody puts a dollar value to it. People only see returns on it if somebody comes in and entices them to give them approval to go and cut down those trees so they can get some money in royalty or stumpage. And that's how they say, oh, we got money for it, but the trees are gone. We're changing the permutation, the equation say, you will get money if you keep the trees in the ground. Because by you keeping the trees in the ground, you're sucking more carbon dioxide from the air, pumping out more oxygen. Very basic. There's nothing peculiar about it, there's nothing mystical about it. It's very simple. We just need to get our head around it. All this information is available, and we have a lot of good people who are working on it. We have a lot of experts who are coming along. I'd like to thank all of them for having the input. A lot of them are very dedicated, very committed to what we are doing. I'd like to, of course, thank the climate change team and all the other agencies that are involved. We'd like to also acknowledge FNU, and please understand the Climate Change Division is quite a growing body of information and knowledge. You can tap into that, and I think that cross-collaboration between policy and academia, policy and research, I think is that point where we can actually get a lot of runs on the board for ourselves. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to this launch, and thanks once again for everybody who put this together for us. Vinaka, thank you.